this is Sarah from Sassyquilting, and I'm here to show you how to make the Dream Big quilt panel. I recently learned how to do it on Quilt Path, so I'm going to show you how you can use your quilt path to make the Dream Big quilt. Now, keep in mind, I don't work for Quilt Path. I'm not a Quilt Path representative, but I do want to share with you an easy way to do it. If you aren't already familiar with how to do customized quilting with your quilt path, you probably will want to take a class. There's lots of APQS representatives out there that can teach you how to do that. I recently took several classes with Jeff Yasenchuk and Brenda Shreve, and they're both really good teachers, and they would be able to teach you the basics so that something like I'm going to show you right now will come across to you as even easier. But we'll start from the beginning, and by the end of this video, which is very short and won't take long, I'll show you how to do a couple petals. You'll be good to go, and you can get as excited as I was to be able to make my first Dream Big quilt. So to begin with, you're going to need a digital pattern, and my digital pattern I have purchased is from the Wasatch Quilting, if I said that correctly, and it's digitized and owned by Nancy Hack, and this is what it looks like on the back. You can purchase them on Etsy, on Intelligent Quilter, on all the different websites, but this one I really fell in love with, so this is the one I'm going to show you today. Any digitized quilting should work for the way I'm going to show you how to do it. This is just what I'm going to use as an example. I'm going to show you how I set up my panel on my quilt machine. First, obviously, I have my backing set up down here, and then it was recommended to use batting, which obvious. I used Quilter's 80/20, Quilter's Dream, and then secondary batting I use wool, and that really helps the stitching stand out as you go along. And then I tack down each of my battings one at a time, and then I tack down the big Dream panel. And so you know where the top of the Dream Big panel is, the Hoffman, California, blah blah blah, that's the bottom, and the top will be up here. And if you have any confusion as to making sure whether or not that's the top, just refer to your digital pattern print, and it should have the petals, so you can make sure that the petals match up with the top. Okay, one thing I wanted to mention to you, when you're doing your petal placement, it doesn't matter where you start or stop. However, I recommend that you start towards the top, but not the very corners. Start with, well, if you look at my sheet, I would start with number 10 or 9 or 8, 7, 6, and then work your way down towards the middle, down here, and you want to do your very corners last. Okay? So your pattern should have come with a schematic, something like this, where it shows each petal. My petals are numbered, so that way each petal is its own digital pattern, and I know which digital pattern I'm going to choose when sewing each petal out. I'm going to start with petal number 9 over here. So I'm going to go into my quilt path, go to select and sew, and in my patterns I have my own folder called Dream Big Again. That's where I saved everything. And then I'm going to search for my petal number 9. Which is right there. It says, do the pattern exceeds the size of my safe area? Do I want to, they allow us to scale to fit. Do I want to resize it? Yes, absolutely, because I save mine as QLI, and QLI comes in really big. So let me delete that for you so I can start over. Select and sew, pattern number 9, resize it. There's my petal number 9. Now I need to figure out how it's going to go onto the machine. How does the machine know where petal number 9 is? I'm going to go to my plugins. Down here I have my marking tool. Click on my marking tool, and from there I'm going to trace out the petal, and every time I trace it I'm going to click the add button. So let me show you how to do that. So I have this little chalk tracing tool that I use because sometimes it's hard to see the petals. So first thing I'm going to do is trace out the petal with white chalk so it's easier for me to see. And it doesn't have to be exact, because when you do these quilts, ugh, I can't talk today. There's not a single one of them that are exactly the same. The way you iron them, the way they're printed on, it's all always different. So now I can see my petal a little bit easier. On my screen you see my green circle. That is my starting point. The red circle is my ending point. But I'm more focused on where I'm going to start. And on my petal, on the actual fabric, I'm going to try and match up my starting point to that area. And what I'm going to do is use my machine and follow the petal, and every time I move it, well, I'm going to push this add button, and that's going to make a mark. And first we'll show you what it looks like on the computer, and then I'll show you what it looks like on the actual quilt. Right now I'm moving the machine. I'm tracing out the petal. I'm following the white chalk that I had laid down. Now my camera assistant can show you close up where it is on the quilt that I'm tracing. I'm even going to trace next to the petal next to it, because I want to make sure that my design doesn't go into that area. So I do a whole 360-degree tracing area. And that's where I started, approximately. Now, if at any point I forgot to trace something or I messed up, I can do this remove last button, and that removed the last point I did, and then I can just add it again. So now what I'm going to do is push OK, and there we go. There's my petal, and there's where I want it to go. So now the machine needs to know, how are you going to put that petal right there? Well, I go to settings, I go 1 point placement method, and start point. Again, 1 point placement method and start point. Press OK. Now I know that's my start point, and that's where I'm telling the machine I want it to go. So on my petal, if my partner can show you down here, so here's my start point right here. Then I'm going to come back up to the computer, and I'm going to click this button, and that's where it went, which is obviously not where I want it. So I'm going to move my machine up and click it again, and now it's a little bit closer, and I click it again, and I'm going to and then keep clicking it till it fits into there. Okay, but you see we have a problem. This petal obviously is too small for the area I traced. And the reason that is because the measurements for my petal are not exact. So I'm going to go down here to the bottom right corner in this orange area. I'm going to click on that little button. And I'm going to come to the height and width, and I'm going to change it. And what you have to do is measure the height of your petal and the width of your petal. Now I have a cheat sheet, and in my cheat sheet I already have written down the height and the width of each of my petals. And they're not exact. These numbers change every time you do a quilt, depending on which petal you start with. So I changed the height to 9.65, and because I have the locked, it automatically changed the width. Now let's say I want to change the width to something else, and I want the height to change or to stay. Then I would unlock it, and then I would go in here and I would put in the width I wanted. But I'm okay with the width that it's at. So now you can see it fits better. Now I can have a better idea for placement. So I'm just going to keep barely moving my machine until I get it exactly where I want. Now right here is my next petal. This is the line for where my next petal is supposed to be. I don't necessarily need these little swirls to butt up all the way against the next petal. This little swirl right here, I don't need it to touch that next petal, as long as it stays up against this line, because I know that this is the outline, the top outline of my petal. I want my little blue lines to match up to that. And there can be space between the bottom of my petal and the petal next to it. That's fine, but I don't want space up here because I want it to fit my petal exactly. So I'm going to adjust it just a tad. And that's pretty close. So from there, I would go to move to start point, which it's already at. So never mind, I don't need to move to start point because I already have it at my start point. So I'm going to pull my bobbin and I'm going to push. So and I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that it is right on point. And you can see it's a little off right here. I would have liked it to come up to there, but that's not a problem because I can make up for it later with my next petal. When I do the petal above it, I can fill that in. It's never going to be perfect. You're never going to have each petal land on, or each digitized petal is never going to land on the printed petal exactly perfect, unless you're just a genius. But it really doesn't matter because, like I said, we'll fill it in with the next petal we do. Okay, so I finished petal number 9, and I'll show it to you in a second. I'm going to move on to the next petal, which is next to it, and that's going to be petal number 8. So now I'm going to go to select pattern up here, and it went straight back to my Dream Big Again quilts file folder. And number 8, double click it. And do I want to resize it? Absolutely. There we go. Now you can see I have my outline from the previous petal. So when I go to plugins and I go to my marking tool, I'm going to click remove all, And then that way I can start over with my petal number 8. And I'm going to start tracing it now using my add button and moving the machine along the petal outline. I think the most time consuming part of this quilt is the outlining. Once you get the outlining done, the rest of it's cake. And I'm also outlining the petal next to it because I want to make sure I know where not to go once again. And it's kind of hard to see. I should have traced that one with white chalk, but I didn't. I finished tracing, so now I'm going to push OK. And my outline turns gray. And I want to fit this petal into there. Well, my start point is somewhere down here. So let me try and move my machine. And then I'm going to click this button. Wow, that was pretty close. But it's too wide because you see how my blue lines over here are outside of my gray line, and this little swirl is outside. That's too big, so I'm gonna resize it. So again, I'm gonna go back down here to this bottom right orange peach area and click on this little box, and I'm gonna come over to the left and go to my height. My height I'm okay with. Let me try changing the width instead. And based on my cheat sheet, 9.0. Well, that doesn't make sense. Okay, let me change the height. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong number. 7.555. That's why. There, now it fits a little bit better, and I can move it up a little. And I'm just gonna keep playing with it. See, it's still too big for me. And I have another, I just sewed right here next to it. So I have to make sure that my blue doesn't go over this gray line. Otherwise I'm gonna sew into what I just made. And it's still too wide and too tall. So again, I'm gonna have to adjust my measurements. And you're gonna have to do this with almost every quilt. Every petal's gonna be just a little bit different. There we go. That's pretty dang close, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. Maybe just a hair not so wide because I have this spiral is going into the petal next, is going into this petal, and I don't really want that. So I'm gonna change my width. I'm gonna unlock it because I don't want to touch my height. If I leave it locked, it's gonna change my height too. If I unlock it and then I just do my width, 6.8 from a 7. There we go. I'll try 6.9. I'm being picky, but it just depends on you how much you want to mess with it. Okay, I'm good with that. So now I can sew. As you can see right here is the line for my petal, which I missed it. But it's okay because you can barely tell, and it'll all blend in together. Once it's done, you're not going to notice. Over here, I missed the line by just a little bit, but that's okay because they're never going to be exactly perfect. I'd have to really sit there and play with the measurements. This is pretty darn close. I'm pretty happy with that. And the next quilt I make, the next petal, when I do this petal, I'll just have to be really careful because I'm gonna want to get really close to that line on when I do this petal. It's easier when you do these if these lines, like this swirl, didn't come so close to this petal, because that way it'll make it easier to do this one later. But it still looks good if you can get it that close and you're that confident. So the next petal we're going to do is over here, and that's going to be number 7, but I'll have to use chalk to outline that one because that one I can barely see. Okay, so we just finished petal number 7. No, I'm sorry, number 8. And now I'm going to do number 7. So I'm going to go to select pattern. I'm already in my Dream Big Again folder. And there's number 7. I'm going to double click on it. Do I want to resize it? Absolutely. And there we go. And there was number 8, which I don't want to do number 8. So I'll go to plugins, my marking tool, and remove all. Now I can trace out number 7, which is what I'm going to do. So here I traced it out using my white chalky thing. So now I can kind of have an idea. But if you look at this, like number 3 and number 6, if you can't see the petal exactly, it's really not a big deal because you can adjust the measurements however you want, and I'll make this fit later on when I'm ready to. So if you can't see exactly where the petal is, don't worry about it. Just get it to fit the best you can. You have to occasionally look up to make sure you're actually touching the add button, because a lot of times when I trace it, if I'm not paying attention, I'm not touching the add button, and then I have to start all over, and it's kind of a pain. And take your time, because the better your tracing is, the better it'll be to fit it, and it'll look better in the long run. Things that are obvious that I probably don't need to say, but gotta fill that air. Okay, so I have it traced out. Now I push OK, and then I'm gonna place it. And it's way too big. So I'm gonna go down to my height and weight. I'm sorry, height and width. It doesn't weigh anything, I suppose. And my height, I have a cheat sheet. I have it at 6.854. Let's see what that does. Wow! Impressive. It's pretty close. But I'm happy with that. Now you can see it right here on my gray line, it doesn't quite fit. I could just bring it up a little bit and then shrink the pattern height wise to get it to fit in there. So I'm gonna do 6. Well, actually I don't want the width to change, so I'm gonna unlock it. And I'm going to go 6.5. Let me see. And There we go. And then I have some room here on the bottom between this petal and the petal below it, and that's okay because that's gonna be, that gray line is gonna be filled in with thread later on. So you don't have to fit it all the way down. I want to fill in the top, not the bottom. The top is more important because that's the outline of the petal. The bottom is the outline of the next petal. So I'm focusing on the top of the petal I'm actually doing now. Okay, so here you can see I had marked it up here, which apparently the petal doesn't go up there, which is a good example of why don't worry too much about the markings or where you think the petal's supposed to go necessarily, because the digital pattern's gonna go where it wants the petal to go anyways. Down here I have some room, which is great because when I do the next petal underneath here, that's gonna be a line, and that's gonna really make this petal stand out. I don't need this line to touch this petal. I want this line to meet up with the top of this petal. So, came out pretty good. So for all you Quilt Path users out there, I hope this was helpful. And if you have any more questions, or if these 3 petals still you're confused, just message me. I'll make another video, answer whatever questions I have. If you get frustrated and you give up, just message me. I'll make one for you. It's no problem. But hopefully this was educational for you. You guys have a great day, and I hope you have a lot of fun making one like I did.